GeekCastRadio.com presents the Geek Cast Radio Top 100 Animated Series of All Time. Steve Megatron Phillips, Mike GFG1 Blanchard, Kevin Optimus Solo Thompson.
Alright, welcome back to the countdown, everyone. You've heard, hopefully, 100 through 61 to this point, and hopefully everybody has listened to episode 20, the introduction. If you haven't listened to the introduction, please stop what you're doing, listen to the intro now, because that'll save you from making ignorant comments later on. And today we're going to go from 60 to 41, and before we get going, I got a couple pieces of business I just want to take care of. First of all, we have another special guest with us representing This Week in Geek. We have Double D David Dennis. Hello, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going very well, and we're happy to have a member of the Twig family here with us, even though Mike sometimes double dips between the Geek Cast Radio and This Week in Geek. And just a couple pieces of business besides that. If you haven't noticed, our list has been getting a little bit of an attention. Over at GeekCastRadio.com, we have been getting dozens of comments on the individual episode post. There's also been a forum thread started over at Toon Zone that has had over 30 replies to it so far.
Yeah, it's got 3 pages of replies right now.
So if you want to get involved in any of those discussions, please do that. I will just, again, repeat, please listen to 20 before you make any comments, because a couple people apparently didn't listen to that, because we explain a little bit of the bias in episode 20. We explain a little bit about some anime things. And I'm once again seeing people talking about nostalgia making our entries or influencing our picks. And once again, I'm just going to say that if a show was good at the time when it aired, that means something, even if it doesn't hold up. And I'll leave it at that. Like we said in the last episode, the more we get down the countdown, the less bias you're going to see. And I am confident in saying every show that we talk about today basically deserves to be in the top 100. I'm confident that all of them do, in my opinion. I think most of the bias is over now. So there may be one or two that you guys might have an issue with, but we'll see. Anybody have any comments before we get into number 60? Mike, I know you got a comment. You always got a comment.
No, I'm fine. Steve?
No, I think I'm good. I think I just want to find out what's new on them.
Well, that's because, Kevin has to be a control freak, and he's the only one that knows the list.
And everybody knows that anytime Mike calls anybody a control freak, pot, kettle, meet each other.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
Let's get right to the countdown then.
60.
All right, so starting off our episodes today, number 60, The Tick from 1994. Now, I myself am not super familiar with this show, but I know at least one of us is, because Double D, you had this at number 27. Why does Tick deserve to be in the top 100?
I grew up with this show, and this is just kind of a cult classic. Even if you ask Mike, I don't know, I don't think he spent as much time on his, well, I know he didn't spend as much time on his list, but let's not get into that. But even Mike absolutely loves this show, and this is one of the better superhero spoof shows out there, and it definitely had that weird kind of offbeat 90s humor. I guess I can... if that makes any sense.
No, it doesn't.
It was a sense of humor that was very distinct to the 90s. I don't know if you could really get away with the Tick nowadays, as we saw with the very short-lived live-action show. But, this show is kind of a classic to me, and I'm glad it's on the list. I don't think it really... I think it's in a good spot, I'd say that.
I was just going to ask you that because IGN had this as number 6.
Yeah, it does not deserve to be that high on the list. I think 60 makes more sense than 6.
See, they just forgot the 0, that's all.
Yeah.
It did get some critical acclaim, a couple Annie nominations, an Annie win, a couple Daytime Emmy nominations. 5 of us voted for it. A couple people had it in their top 20. I'm fine with it being on the list because it was around for a while, 3 seasons in the later part of the mid-90s. A lot of people loved this. It just was something that I kind of missed out on. I was in, in middle school at this point, and I just wasn't watching as many cartoons, so I kind of missed out on it. Mike, what are your opinions on the Tick making our countdown?
Spoon!
Spoon.
Oh man, I wish we had I wish we had a clip of Townsend Coleman saying that. It's funny, Townsend Coleman, who voiced the Tick, he went from Michelangelo and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to the Tick.
True.
And I never really got into this show. I respect it for what it is. I don't dislike it. It's okay, but it has a certain taste that you have to have, I find.
I should mention, too, I almost forgot, this also was in a tie with number 61, which was the last entry of last episode, which was Phineas and Ferb, but Tick won in a tiebreaker. Steve, any thoughts on the Tick being in the top 100?
I would definitely say that this was one of those shows that deserves to be on the top 100. Granted, it wasn't on my list, probably one because I forgot about it, which usually happened to a couple of the shows that I found out in this list so far. But I did watch it, although I don't remember almost anything about it besides Townsend Coleman and as the Tick at this point in time. But I'd have to say that it definitely was a pretty entertaining show, kind of off the wall, out of the mold type superhero type cartoon.
I think we're actually starting off all 4 in agreement that this show deserves to be on the list, but it does not deserve to be number 6 like IGN had it.
Oh, no way in hell. I think it fits right where it's at.
I think it's almost a perfect placement. So that's a good start to our episode today. Let's see where we go next.
59.
I am Adora, He-Man's twin sister and defender of the Crystal Castle. This is Spirit, my beloved steed. Fabulous secrets were revealed to me the day I held aloft my sword and said, "For the honor of Grayskull!"
So following up the Tick at 59, we have an 80s classic in She-Ra, obviously the sister to He-Man. And I know some people are going to have, this may be the one show on our episode today where people have a problem with this, but I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier on in the countdown when we talked about Jem. Jem and She-Ra defined basically 80s cartoons for females. In my opinion, like those were the 2 biggest cartoons for the female audience in an entire decade, so I think it does deserve a spot. It might be a little high in my opinion, even though I ranked this at 59, which is where it falls in. So I guess I got this one on the dot. Mike, you had this one in your top 11.
Well, I had it in the top 20.
Number 11.
Well, same thing, whatever. And as we've said before, the whole point of the project is multiple people. So, like, my personal list is obviously going to be very biased towards 80s stuff, but the actual list that we're creating here, I mean, 59 is fine. I wish it was a little bit higher, maybe like top 40, but
I just wanted to know if you had anything to admit since you had Jem and She-Ra in your top 11.
Yeah, what's going on there, Mike?
It's just one of those things that it's nostalgia, and it's just I remember watching them as a kid, and that's really all it is for me as far as my personal list. I need to clarify that because I don't want anybody coming at me saying, "Oh, well, it's too high or it's not high enough." My personal list, I think all of our lists are very biased, but I did work and try to get as many like what I felt deserved all time. And that's, as I said, multiple lists and Kevin's whole point system and all that is what put it here. And I think it's, it was one of those things where,
well, what put it here was you and Pixel Dan putting it in your top 20.
Well, true.
To be honest.
but my point is that, like you said, Kevin, there was no, like, action cartoon for girls. I mean, there was either Barbie or Gem or, something like that in the 80s, and this is what they created for it, and it was, regardless if it stands up now, I mean, it was something that girls
Did you just invent a Barbie cartoon that didn't exist in the 80s?
There were direct-to-video Barbie movies.
Yeah.
There was no Barbie cartoon.
Yeah, well, no, I meant Barbie as in, like, the doll. As far as, like, stuff in the 80s in general, not specific to cartoons, but, I mean, having She-Ra at 59, I'm fine with it.
I think it's too high, even though I ranked it at 59. I think this one, I'm going to reiterate, this one, Cops, Brave Star, they all deserve to be like in the 90s, I think. This was not ranked by IGN. Steve, did IGN get it right? Should this not have been ranked?
On the one hand, I can see where they would think that, but on the other, there's still, it's enough of a following behind it, and it's still primarily attached to He-Man. So,
well, and I don't think some people understand the cult following that this and Gem still have. We are all, into, like, some of us are into, like, the superheroes, and we know that there's a cult following, and there's, like, web pages, and there's forums and boards and all that about that. And same with Transformers, same with Thundercats, same with Turtles. I don't think people realize that there are those out there for She-Ra and Gem as well.
Yeah, and I would definitely say that this deserves to be on the list. I agree with you, too, that it shouldn't be this high on there. But it's still one of those shows that needs to be on there, just like Gem and all the other ones that, and especially because it's one that it was something young girls could gravitate towards as well.
Did have 93 episodes. Maybe 93 is where it should have came in. I don't know. Just thought of that.
I would say this deserves to be somewhere probably in the 80s or 90s on the list.
I would agree.
But I understand the cultural significance of She-Ra for young girls. I never really watched it personally, but I can see why or how it would get on the list, but I don't think it really deserves to be this high. But
right,
that's just me.
I completely agree. I think I kind of voted it a little bit lower just because I knew a lot of people wouldn't vote for it. So I put it kind of right at that 60 mark, but I think we're all kind of in agreement that it maybe should be closer to the 80-90 mark. Mike, any last thoughts on your love for She-Ra since you had it so high?
No.
Okay.
58.
So we started in the mid-90s, then we went to the mid-80s, and now we are back in the mid-90s for another one that kind of has a cult following at number 58, and you should obviously know it from that theme song bit, Sailor Moon. It was on for 5 seasons, 200 episodes. 4 out of the 5 people that voted for it voted it in their top 20. It falls in at number 58. I'm going to start with the only one of us that actually had it on their list, which is Double D. You had it at 83. So is this another one like She-Ra where it deserves to be on the list, but it may be a little bit too high, or did the 4 people that had it in their top 20 have it right?
I think it's a little bit too high. My list is kind of biased towards the 90s in the same way that Mike's is biased towards the 80s. I grew up with Sailor Moon, and I was just like obsessed with the show when I was like 8 or 9. Until you got to like the 2nd or 3rd season, and then it just fell apart. And even as a kid, when you're a kid, you have less taste in things, but I still didn't like it past like that point. So
yeah, I love the theme song though.
Yeah, this show has a wicked theme song. As soon as you put Sailor Moon in the little Skype chat here, immediately the Sailor Moon theme song started running through my head. So
I've never even seen the show, and I still put that theme song like in my top list. Like whenever I make a top list of like 90s theme songs or whatever, Sailor Moon's always in there, even though I've never really hardly seen the show.
Nice. It is a very memorable show for people that grew up with it.
Yeah,
but I think it should be maybe a little bit lower, like maybe in the 60s, 70s, something like that.
it's one of those that I think if I watched it, I actually would like it. I just never have had the chance or never taken the time to actually get involved in it. IGN, again, this is the second one in a row that IGN has not ranked. Mike, how do you feel about IGN not ranking it? You didn't rank it. We did. What do you think?
I think it does deserve its spot because and I didn't rank it because I remember watching a couple episodes here and there, but it wasn't something that I was watching all the time back then. This is another one where, whereas Gem and She-Ra were, for girls in the 80s, this was pretty much the 90s girls cartoon, I think.
The weird thing I find, though, is more guys seem to like Sailor Moon than girls.
Yeah.
It must have been that naked changing sequence.
It's guys that were of the right age.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, this show would have been perfect for you.
No, I was already like 15 or 16 by this point. I was liking real women at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we didn't have the internet to post all those, let's say, non-authorized Sailor Moon videos yet. So.
Steve, what's your opinion on Sailor Moon making our countdown?
I would say that it's definitely something that should be on there because, granted, it lasted a long time. There's a lot of memorable things to it. I, granted, have only caught it a couple times, but I still think it warrants a spot on the list. I don't really know where to place it, but I wouldn't say I would put it any higher than where it's at.
And I think it's just another example that I'm to the point, like I said before, every show we get to now, I think deserves a spot in the 100. We might disagree on where it goes, but I don't think many of these people can say don't deserve to be at least in the top 100.
Yeah.
Except for number 95 a few episodes ago.
I don't even know what that was.
I don't even know what he's talking about either.
Captain Planet.
Oh, well, I said this episode. I said every show we get to in this episode.
I know.
Yeah, let's not... Why are we talking about Captain Planet? That has nothing to do with Sailor Moon. Although it would be cool if they teamed up, but...
That'd be interesting.
It's a different story, yeah.
57.
Super Teen Extraordinaire, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, runs around in underwear, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, rescues Washington, D.C., Freakazoid, Freakazoid, and there's something better on TV, Freakazoid, Freakazoid, you crazy, so below you, get past the junction slowly.
All right, staying in the mid-90s for another one at 57, Freakazoid. It was 53rd on IGN's list. It is 57th on ours. It was 58th on JT's. Steve, you had it in your top 20, as did Phil, Mike Laidman. Ryan had it at 22, so a lot of people had this higher. Does it deserve to be higher, Steve?
I think so, just because this was such a hilarious show to watch, and it pretty much related to nerddom in general.
Mm-hmm.
You had this geek that basically sits there on his computer and then hits this span of keys and turns into a superhero. Who wouldn't want to relate to that?
True.
If only it worked like that.
Yes.
It doesn't? Dang it.
I wish.
I was hoping.
Yeah, I think even though I had a bias towards the 90s, as I said earlier, Freakazoid was one of those shows that I had on my list in one of the earlier incarnations of it, and then it got kicked off by other shows when I started to think of other things. So I do like this show, and I understand the importance of it. I just... I don't know. I'm glad it's on the list, but again, I didn't end up putting it on my list for that reason. I thought there were better shows that I could have ranked.
I forgot to tell everybody again that about the amount of time you put in creating your list and how many versions of your list that I received over the...
Well, I didn't actually put that much time into the initial version of the list, and that's why I kept doing revisions, because I kept realizing that I had forgotten stuff in my rush to kind of put it together the first time.
I was a big fan, because I knew at least at some point you were putting some thought into it and wanting to redo things. Mike, I haven't given you a chance yet. Your thoughts on Freakazoid?
It was one of those shows that it came alongside Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and all that stuff, and if you couldn't get into it, you just couldn't get into it. But if you got into it, you were, termed, quote-unquote, a super fan of it. I like the theme. It's one of those shows that it is a really good show for its time. I do think it deserves a spot on the list. I don't think it deserves any, I think it fits right where it is. I don't think it needs to be any lower. So
I kind of agree with you. I know Steve wants it a little bit higher on the list. I think it's fine where it is. I wouldn't want it too much higher myself, but that's just because I don't think its audience was as big as some of these other shows. But I do agree that it does deserve to be somewhere around where it's at right now. So I'm fine with it.
I would still say that it's roughly in the same range, even as IGN. So I would say that this one pretty much is an even knockout on both lists anyway.
All right.
56.
So far, the most represented franchise in the countdown at 81, if you think back, at number 81 we had the 1960s Spider-Man. At number 75 we had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and now at number 56 we have the 2008 version, Spectacular Spider-Man.
Oh, thank God. Please, nobody from Toon Zone come after us. It's on the countdown.
It's coming in at number 56. IGN had it at 30. We're going to do a little bit of talking about this one because, again, I want to bring up the whole franchise thing. I'm actually the only one that voted for this out of the four of us, and I'm the one that's not the superhero fan, so let's not go there too much. 4 people had it in their top 30. How do you like this one showing up? I'm going to start with Mike. How do you like this one showing up at 56 in comparison to the other Spider-Mans that are out there and that have already made the list?
I've only caught maybe 4 episodes of this series. And it was one of those things when it was on, I couldn't catch it when it was on, you know. I've since gone back and watched YouTube videos of it. It's a very well written series. The voice acting in it is just amazing. I'm glad it came in at the countdown. I'm sure a lot of people will say, oh, why isn't it higher? Why isn't it lower? And when you first mentioned Spider-Man franchise, I was like, oh no, please, no. That other show better not be ranking here, because that'll piss me off. But no, Spectacular Spider-Man is just a well thought out, I mean, it's a very story-driven cartoon, and it was very well done, I thought, and 56, I think, is, from what we've created so far from 100 to now, you know, right here in the middle is where it should rank.
Josh Keaton was definitely good as Spider-Man, I thought. You know, I based this one more off of when I went to do my superhero voting. I'll at least give this disclaimer. Since I don't know a lot about all the superhero shows, I did a lot of research on as far as like what the fandoms out there like, as far as which Batmans are the best, which Supermans are the best, which, Hulk or X-Men are the best, which Spider-Man are the best. And a lot of people had this one towards the top of their Spider-Man list. Steve, in comparison to the 2 Spider-Man shows that have already shown up or any of the other Spider-Man shows out there, should it have been 60s Spider-Man and His Amazing Friend and now Spectacular Spider-Man? Is that the right order so far?
I would definitely say so. I mean, granted, I haven't. Everything I've heard about this show has been good. I personally have not seen it, but having seen elements of the other 2, I would definitely say that this should be on the list. I don't agree with that it should be in the top, 20 or 30, but I'm glad to see it at least hit the list, pretty much where it hit.
Should we see any more Spider-Man, or is this the end of it?
Oh, we better see more Spider-Man.
I'm thinking that at least we're going to see the 1990s Spider-Man show hit pretty close to the top 30,
I'm pretty sure
20.
quite a few people put that on their list, so I'm thinking the 90s Spider-Man's probably going to be on here. But I'm okay with this one where it is.
Do you think that this one's better than Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends or the 60s one?
From the little that I've seen of it, I'd say so, yeah. I think they put a lot more thought into this one. Okay. The 60s and 70s ones were good for their time, or I guess Amazing Friends was early 80s, but I mean, they were good for their time. Mm-hmm. So I can see how they made the list, but I think this list is developing a bit of a Spider-Man bias. I don't know.
This is the third Spider-Man show, and that's definitely more than any other franchise has. I don't know if any other franchise has a chance to catch it or not. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Maybe Batman. I don't know.
Batman has made its emergence in the list, so who knows what'll show up later as far as that's concerned. But I can honestly say I haven't voted for any of the Spider-Man so far.
I just hope that Spider-Man Unlimited does not come in anywhere near here now, because it's going to be a travesty if it does.
Well, so far we have 3 Spider-Man and 1 Batman, so Batman would have to catch up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
wouldn't be that hard to do.
Yeah. Besides Spider-Man Unlimited, is there any others that you really are hoping don't make the list, or are there any others that even have a shot?
Really, at this point for me now, it's just Spider-Man the Animated Series from 1994. I mean, it's as far as the Spider-Man cartoons go. Spidey 94 was, people will say, oh, the animation doesn't hold. It's not about holding up. It's about what you remember watching it. Spider-Man the Animated Series had really, really great storytelling. It had great voice acting, and hopefully it'll show up.
We'll have to see.
55.
All right, the 5th pre-1970s show to make the list at 55, the Pink Panther show. I'm going to start with this one. I had this ranked at 53, and it came in at 55. Actually, 8 of the 20 people had it on their list. This basically ran in one form or another for a decade. And I honestly, even though I only put it at 53, I think Pink Panther should actually be in the top 50. I think this is a little too low for it. I think it should be a little bit higher. Just because, I know it wasn't your typical cartoon as far as like voicing and stuff like that. It's basically without voice, just with music and that type of thing. But this is an iconic show from that era. It's one of the most iconic shows from that era. And I think it's a crime that it's not higher, because I think it just shows how much some of the younger generation forget some of those classic shows. I might be alone on this opinion, but I think it deserves higher than 55.
No, I'd agree with you. I had it as 49 on my list, so I think it deserves to be in the top 50. Like you said, this show mostly relied on music and comical situations more than dialogue, but it was so well put together, and the music was just wonderful. I'm not entirely sure. I know Henry Mancini did the music for the Pink Panther films. I'm not sure who did the music for the
It was
show.
also his theme that was used in the cartoon series.
I know he used the theme. I'm not sure if he did the actual music, but still, like, it's a memorable series for what it was, and very influential for its time. So,
well, and a show that could capture a kid's attention at that time that had no
without
talking,
dialogue,
basically.
yeah.
Like, to be able to do that type of comedy without that, I think it adds to how good it was. It was nominated for one Daytime Emmy, which was a big deal back then because cartoons weren't nominated for that stuff a lot. Mike, you had it at 63. Does this belong in the top 50 or?
Oh yeah, it does. The Pink Panther cartoons specifically were awesome, were great because normally it's him. I remember one specific episode, he was trying to get some sleep and there was something going on outside his house or whatever. Or something ends up bothering the Pink Panther, and yeah, this so deserves it. The other thing I want to mention is this also had cartoons running with it. This is another one of those shows that had cartoons running with it, which were The Ant and the Aardvark, which did have voice acting to them, and The Inspector. Those two I love those two cartoons. But
I think we did give it a little bit more respect, obviously, than IGN. IGN had it at 67, so at least we got it higher than that at 55. But I still think, like I said before, this is a top 50 show.
Oh yeah, it should have been a little bit higher.
Now maybe Steve disagrees because Steve, you're the only one of us that did not vote for this. Is this fine where it is? Is it top 50? Should it be lower? Where should it be?
I would probably say that I like it where it's at, just because I'm more so. I liked it back in the day. I mean, granted, it wasn't on my list, but it wasn't one of those most influential shows, in my opinion, of what entertained me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I liked it. There was nothing wrong with it. I liked that it lasted as long as it did, but I don't know if I'd have it under 50. But I would say that it should be at least 50.
Well, 55 is not too far off, I guess, from the midway point. I just think it would have been nice to get it at least that little nod into the top 50. I don't know. We haven't seen a lot of classic shows so far. Like I said, this is only the 5th show that's come in before 1970. We had Johnny Quest. We had Huckleberry Hound.
Hong Kong
Fooey was 70s. We had like one or two other ones that were pre-70s. So far we're not seeing a lot of those classic shows fall in, and we'll have to see. Hopefully we can see some of those get some respect a little bit later on.
54.
From days of long ago, from uncharted regions of the universe, comes a legend. The legend of Voltron, defender of the universe. A mighty robot. Loved by good, feared by evil.
I have not mentioned this before as far as the points a lot, but we have just reached the point where it would actually take 4 people to rank something number 1 on their list in order to get it into the list, meaning a show would have to get over 400 points to make the list, and this is the first of those shows. Coming in at number 54, I know Mike's happy about this one. The 1980s classic Voltron had 124 episodes. IGN ranks this one at 76. We rank it at 54. All 6 people that ranked this actually ranked it higher than 54. So the only reason it's not higher is because more people didn't rank it, but all 6 people had it in their top 50. Mike, how do you feel about Voltron coming in at 54?
This show should have been higher. This show should have at least...
You know how I feel about Doug, so there you go.
Well, yeah, all right, well, the thing about it is any of the 80s shows that come in that I grew up with, I will say should have been higher, but that's just my personal bias. But, Voltron should have at least made like 49 or 48, I think, or, something along those lines. It should have been at least just barely making in the top 50. Voltron had a great opening story, the telling of the 5 space explorers and finding the lions and finding the castle of lions and all that stuff. One of the things I did not know as a kid, and I found out later, was that Peter Cullen had done voices on Voltron, and he specifically does the narration in the opening theme song as well. And I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, wait, what's Optimus Prime doing on this show?
Yeah. It's basically the same voice like he does with a lot of them, but I will say this much. We got it better than IGN. It's better than 76.
Yeah. I mean, Voltron was one of those shows. It's one of those classic 80s shows. And I know that people, for me personally, if you go back and you listen to Tooncast episode 4, I specifically say that to me, this is not anime.
Well, I'm just going to bring that up. This is if there is an anime show for non-anime fans, this is it.
And I would say Sailor Moon and maybe Pokemon fall into that group as well.
Yeah, I mean there's a few shows that even though they're anime, even people that don't like anime like them, and that's the situation for me. Like this one, and there was a couple other 80 shows that I'm not going to get into a lot because they're not on our countdown. But there's always those few that cross those boundaries even to non-anime fans, and this is for sure one of them.
And one of the reasons why I say, to me, Voltron is not anime is just because of when it was on.
You're going to get railed for this, by the way.
No, I'm not.
People are going to be calling for your head because you're calling this not anime.
I know. Well, all right. Well, I will say I know it came from Go Lion, and yes, I know Go Lion was what it came from a multiple of different animes from Japan, but the U.S. Americanized version of it. It doesn't feel like it's anime to me, and it told a specific story, and yeah, they had to change a few things, like, Sven being injured instead of just outright dying. one of the things I do want to bring up is Voltron was the first show to have stereo. First cartoon in the 80s to have stereo sound. And it was just amazing.
That was a big deal back in the day. I remember that. And things would have a little thing. At first it was in color, and then there would be a thing at the bottom that would say in stereo, and now it's moving towards being in 3D. So,
Double D, does this deserve a spot on the list? You did not rank it.
I think the only reason I didn't rank this is because I sort of forgot about it, because I never really grew up with Voltron, though I understand its cultural significance and I understand why people like it so much. So I am glad that it made it on the list, and I think it's right about where it deserves to be, sorry.
Yeah, we didn't talk about where it was. I mean, I did say that 6 of us voted it in the top 50, and Mike said it should be a little bit higher. I'm not necessarily upset with this being at 54. To me, when I think about Voltron, I don't necessarily think top 50, so I'm kind of okay with it. Steve?
Well, to start out with, I would agree with Mike that I don't see it as an anime, but I do see that it is still an anime.
Right.
But granted, I don't have this on my list either, but it wasn't one of those shows that I can see the following behind it. I can see why everybody loved it. You know, I don't know why IGN ranked it so damn low. They're just fucking retarded. But I would definitely say that it's top 50 worthy.
Right.
Maybe even top 40 worthy. But I mean, I'm not completely dissatisfied with where it landed on the list.
Yeah.
Well,
I do like it, but it wasn't one of those shows that I could sit through often.
It seems like we're starting a trend here because, Pink Panther, IGN did not have high enough. Voltron, they did not have high enough, and it's going to continue.
At least we beat IGN.
And we're going to continue to beat IGN.
53.
We have a couple trends continuing. First of all, the trend of older shows not getting the amount of respect that I think they should. The second trend is IGN doing horrible because they ranked this one at 68, and at least we're beating it at number 53 with Popeye the Sailor. I don't understand. There's 7 people that voted for this. We all voted it in the top 50 except for one. Mike, how the hell did you vote this 99?
Fuck you.
It all goes back to Bluto the Rapist.
Oh my God.
What?
Seriously? Okay, now I need to clarify. If you go back and you listen to Tooncast episode
Tooncast. I'm just kidding.
73, I think it wasn't 73, Kev?
I don't know. I'm not Rain Man.
Shit.
Definitely Kmart brand.
Shut up, Steve.
Just explain yourself.
When we covered Popeye on Tooncast, when I actually went back and watched the cartoon and I looked at the show, the first thing I saw was, okay, Bluto is a stalker and a potential rapist. That's all he is. He wants to get olive oil and fuck her brains out. That's all it is.
But why does that make this 99th best show instead of top 50?
Yeah, but that's most bad guys in cartoon shows are like that, though. It's kind of a common theme.
To illustrate this further, I had it 31. Steve, you had it 34. Glade had it 36. Pixel Dan 27. Double D, you had it 22. JT at least had it at number 50. To me, this and Pink Panther are no-brain top 50 shows.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think this deserves to be way higher on the list. This is probably even top 30 material. I mean, I'm glad it made the list, obviously, but this show is a classic. And
yeah, it's almost like it's come past the point of just making the list, and now it's about like where these are falling at, because all these should make the list.
Yeah, exactly.
But Popeye was on air, whether it was new shows, reruns, or the old theatrical shorts or whatever, I mean, it was on air for almost freaking 50 years.
Yeah, there are very few shows that they can just keep redoing and rehashing, and there's the live-action movie and all that. Actually, I think this was one of the first cartoon shows to get a live-action movie way back in 1980 with Robin Williams.
Yeah.
And just the cultural impact that it had, I'm just a little bit surprised that it showed up now instead of later, but...
So the point is that IGN ranked at 68, we ranked it higher, and all of us except for Mike ranked it higher. So Mike, IGN is the only one to get it better than you.
You are the Judas Iscariot among us, my friend.
Except for the few people, obviously, that didn't put it on their list at all. Steve, your thoughts on Popeye?
It should have been a hell of a lot higher than this. This was the shit back in the day, man. Even if you didn't like watching or didn't like, spinach or whatever. I mean, this was something that you see this guy eat like a freaking vegetable, and he gets these like monstrous muscles and just beats the hell out of whoever's his opposition.
This was like the first pro-social or like cartoon that was like, fuck Captain Planet. This was like telling us to eat our vegetables back in the 60s.
It's like, eat your vegetables. It'll make you big and strong. And you can beat up big guys like Bluto that are trying to rape your girlfriend. But anyways,
I will say that they're both crazy for liking olive oil.
Well,
she's kind of, I don't know, stick figure, like almost something you'd see on Nightmare Before Christmas. But
just for Tim Burton got his ideas,
obviously. But I mean, it's still a show that deserves to be much higher on the list than where it's at.
We should not be talking about this episode.
Yeah, this should be next episode for sure. And IGN, what the fuck is wrong with you? And Mike, really, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Clearly, he doesn't like rape.
And it's not only that. And
he's not the one causing it, though.
Shut up, Steve.
Unless he wants to.
Maybe that's why it's at number 99. He wants Bluto.
No.
It's the fact that Popeye is stopping him.
It's almost like the Dark Knight. It's the Joker. He wouldn't know what to do with her when he got her.
Exactly.
God.
Mike, just admit you're wrong.
The other thing about Popeye is the way that they advertise eating your vegetables, they advertise it like he's doing fucking steroids.
Well, they probably wanted it to be that, but they couldn't, so they had to make it vegetables. Mike, just admit you're wrong so we can move on.
52.
Simple as can be.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to sound like a broken record here because, once again, IGN got this way wrong, and I think we got it a little bit wrong. I think it should be higher. 52 Smurfs. Now, let me start. It was on for a decade. It was on for the entire 80s. 421 episodes, 5 Daytime Emmy nominations, 2 Daytime Emmy wins. This is the pinnacle as far as if there was a cartoon for that generation, that decade, a cartoon for that age, like that preschool, kindergarten age group, Smurfs was it. Like, live action, you had Sesame Street. Cartoon, you had Smurfs. This is what you watched at a young age. If you were a kid in the 80s, this belongs top 50. I know 52 is close. It belongs top 50. Mike, what do you think?
I agree with you.
And I don't care who says it doesn't hold up or who says this is a perfect example of the people that say you're voting on nostalgia, you're voting on stuff you grew up with, or you're voting with stuff that is either unwatchable or doesn't hold up today. I don't care if it was good for 10 years, it deserves a spot. It was good for the kids at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it holds up today or not. It wasn't trying to hold up in 2010. It was trying to hold up in 1980, 1981, 1982, and it successfully did that.
And now we're getting a live-action movie out of it.
Exactly, which is kind of freaking scary. Which
is probably going to be horrible, but that's a different discussion.
But I think we might have two sides of the spectrum here because people either rank this high or rank this low. I will say 9 people voted for it out of the 20 that submitted lists. Now, me and Mike have this in the top 35. Steve, you and Double D have this in 87 and 94th, so did IGN get it right when they put it at 97, or did we get it closer to having it right here at number 52?
I would say, I don't know, maybe like a little bit lower than it is. I mean, I never grew up with the Smurfs. I think that's why I ranked it so low. I didn't have that connection with it, but I still put it on my list because I recognized how important it is to people of that generation. The people that grew up in the 80s absolutely adore the Smurfs. So I understand that, but that's why it didn't get any higher on my list with all the rest of my personal favorites.
How about you, Steve?
I would have to say that, for one, I didn't realize there were so many episodes and it went on so long. Because to me, it just seemed like they were telling the same damn story over and over every episode.
Well, they basically were.
So that's probably why I ranked it so low, being 94th on my list. I would probably warrant that, obviously it deserves a spot on the top 100. You just have to be stupid not to have it on there, but it's not, I don't know, just for the fact that it keeps telling the same exact story every episode. Yeah. Like, it's just, I don't know, it gets repetitive. It's almost like Captain Planet, except for Captain Planet was just lame by comparison. I'd rather watch little blue people running around compared to that. But,
and look at running around.
I think two things for me, and I know I kind of said a lot already, but two things. Number one, if you've had, this had 421 episodes. Let's not even go that far. If you've had over, 300 episodes, you're automatically should be a lock for a high spot. I mean, 300 episodes, much less 400. And the other thing, the amount of shows that tried to copy it are endless. Yep. As far as diminutive, little, whether it was people, aliens,
Snorks.
Snorks, the Littles, the Monchichis, I could list about 20 of them if you guys wanted me to, and I don't want to bore everybody.
You're going to bore us.
But this show, everybody tried to copy it, everybody wanted its success, and to me, 400 episodes warrants top 50.
Oh, yeah.
I think it should be a little bit higher, at least top 50, maybe even top 40, just for the cultural significance it has. And as far as it holding up today and the movie and all that, well, whatever. As Kevin has said before, it's not about holding up. It's about ranking the cartoons as they were.
It's unfair. Go ahead.
The fact that they're making a movie shows that the audiences of today, the little 4 to 10-year-olds of today, can still enjoy the Smurfs. And they're probably, since they're making a movie, they're obviously going to market the hell out of the original show. So that shows that the marketing geniuses behind this believe that the children of today can still enjoy the show as much as the children of the 80s. So that's really saying something.
And obviously they're trying to cash in on all the adults that were kids of the 80s that are now going to take their kids to it. But I just think it's unfair to judge people's work from 20, 30, 40 years ago by today's standards, and you got to judge it based on what they did at that time. And to be on, how many cartoons have lasted 9 seasons? If we were to make a list of cartoons based on number of seasons or number of episodes, I'm guessing this would be top 10 or 20 on both lists. Yes. As far as total number of episodes.
But at the same time, that doesn't really dictate the quality of the show.
No, but I'm saying part of quality is how long are you around for your audience at the time when you're being produced.
The staying power of it.
And to not get canceled at all over 10 years, and I guarantee you if we had ratings information involved in this, as far as Nielsen ratings or that type of stuff, it was wiping out the competition for almost all 9 of those years. And to me, that counts on something regardless of overall quality as we view it now. I don't know. I might be one of the minority in feeling that way, because everybody on all the message boards, all they talk about is, does it hold up today, or can I watch it as an adult? The show is not intended for adults.
Yeah, I don't think it matters if you can watch the Smurfs as an adult. It wasn't made for adults. That's not the point.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say I agree maybe that it should be a little bit higher, but...
No, I'm not saying it should be that much higher. I just think it warrants top 50, which we only have one more show left in this half, and then all of them are going to be top 50. So let's see what.
And then we can stop complaining about how they're not in the top 50.
Yes, so let's see what the last one is that doesn't make the top 50.
51.
Chain reaction, living underground. Jitsu action, it's a shell of a town. Turtles count it
Another piece of evidence as to why IGN sucks. They did not rank this show, and everybody knows that this deserves a ranking. The 2003 version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which, under different titles, lasted for 7 seasons, 166 episodes. IGN did not rank this. 6 people did. 5 of those people had it in their top 35. It's the last one that doesn't make the top 50, but it comes in at 51. Steve, what are your thoughts of the latest until this year version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I would definitely have to say that this was a great show. I liked what they did with it this time around. They didn't go for as much of a campy thing like what they did with the 80s version. I mean, the 80s version was great, don't get me wrong. I love that show, and there's no way that anything could top it for what it was. This incarnation of the Ninja Turtles was quite awesome, graphically, vocally, and story-wise. I mean, yeah, it had its off-the-wall moments, but so did the 80s one. And this show definitely is top 100 worthy.
IGN.
I think it should be a little bit higher on the list, but I'm at least glad that it made the list.
I'm glad that it made it at least this high. I think a lot of people forget about it. And I'm going to go out on a limb here because a lot of shows, the original is necessary in order for the other ones to be popular. Like, I don't know, say what you want about certain shows. I'm not going to go Transformers or G.I. Joe on anybody, but like, if the original Thundercats is not popular, we're not getting a new Thundercats this year. Like, that's not something that they just would have came up with, and it wouldn't have been popular. Let's say they did do this Thundercats this year, it would not be popular without that one in the 80s. This Turtle show would have been popular, even, in my opinion, if the 80s Turtles never existed.
Yeah, I think this is one of those shows that actually lives up to the original incarnation. It's one of the ones that I think I forgot to put on my list. I know I put the original Turtles. I think I just wasn't even thinking of this version, but I have seen both, and they're different, and I know people love the 80s one for sort of the nostalgic qualities, but this one almost has better storytelling in some ways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this show, much like Spectacular Spider-Man, was one of those things that was very story driven. The voice acting was great. It got a little wonky when they did Fast Forward because there was so many like time travel stories. I mean, they were basically constantly jumping in DeLoreans and going to different time periods and crap like that. But you know,
it set a whole nother generation onto the Turtles.
Oh yeah,
and the voice acting is actually like as far as like comparing voices, it's hard to do in the Turtles franchise because so many of them are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michael Sinner Nicholas and Wayne Grayson and Sam Riegel and those guys. I mean, they did great in this show. And this show, I like that the fact that they didn't have to go for the same type of feel as the first one. You know, the first one, like we've said, is campy and comedy more. This one's more action, a little, not necessarily darker tones, but darker compared to the 80s one. And
I think what they did with this, and I'm not trying to cut you off, Kev, I think what they did with this is with Turtles 2003, they took the Eastman and Laird comics, and they took the 1987 cartoon, and they meshed them together. Because there are comedy bits in this series.
Yeah, they sort of did like a marriage of like a best of
right
both. Because it's the comics. If you've ever read the comics, they're very dark.
Yeah, they are extremely dark.
Yeah, compared to the show, which was aimed more at kids, and then you get this, which is kind of the happy medium.
Right. Exactly.
And I think the big thing is when you're gonna remake a show that pretty much everybody loves, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you have to do a good job or everyone's just going to hate it. And the fact that people like this enough that it ranked, was this 51 now?
51, yeah.
The fact that it ranked 51 on this list shows that they did a great job of redoing something, staying true to the original, but still doing a great job of updating it for a new audience.
And I know there was a lot of people out there that probably thought this was not going to make our list. So hopefully they're still listening and still tuning in because I think this gives our list some credibility since IGN somehow did not put this on their list. And for all those people that didn't think we were going to, sorry, you're wrong. We recognize the greatness of the Turtles.
Yes.
So let's see what makes our top 50.
50.
I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous. By the power of Grayskull!
I have the
I find it very interesting that this one is back-to-back with the 2003 remake or reboot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show. Our first entry in the top 50, and I'm actually going to say for the first time in this episode that this is a perfect placement for this, the 2002 version of Masters of the Universe.
Wait a minute, they remade Masters of the Universe?
Oh my goodness, if you have
You didn't know that?
I didn't even know this existed.
You need to go get
it. I'm gonna sit out right now, just let you guys talk about this one.
No, you seriously need to go get it. You can get the complete series in one set. It's like just one box set, and it's only like $20 or $30. It is some of the best writing and one of the best reboots of a classic franchise I think I've ever seen. Once again, IGN did not rank this. I had it at 26. Mike, you had it at 22. Chris from Chicken Pot Pot had it at number 2. Ryan had it at number 18. 2 Annie nominations, a Daytime Emmy win. The only bad thing about this series is that it got cut before they finished.
Yeah. Kevin and I can really talk about this because we pretty much watched, well, at least I watched the entire series over a 3-day period. Kevin watched it over like a 10-day period. You know, I've said this before, and if people haven't heard me say it, you won't hear me say it now. The original He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the 1980s version, was single story telling. It was, you know, single episodes, no continuity whatsoever, and they were like mini movies. This one, the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe 2002 cartoon, this actually gave you continuity of a series. It started out at the very beginning.
Well, and the character development was epic.
Yeah, the character development was so great. It started out at the very beginning with Randor being one of the king's head guards or something or other, and they give you this whole backstory of how Skeletor became Skeletor. And all that.
And every time they brought a new character in, the design was perfect. The look was perfect. It's one of those things like David said in the last one, this is a franchise that you have to be very careful when you redo it or when you reboot it, as is, you know, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Turtles, etc., lots of them. And for them to do this, and I think to a person, every He-Man fan was just about happy with this one.
Oh, yeah.
And to make that possible, I mean, the character designs are good. The storytelling's good. They actually develop their characters. I can't say enough good stuff about this. I'm not saying it should be any higher than 50. I'm just very, very happy that it came in at number 50. And that we ranked it since IGN didn't.
Exactly. The last thing I'll say before Steve goes is, when I first saw this, when I first watched it from episode 1, I thought they were going to have the same theme song, because it starts out, you know, I am Adam.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have all this action going on and you get no voiceover.
They basically interrupt him.
Right, exactly, because this is a Skeletor that ain't going to wait around for people to say stuff.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, it ran for 39 episodes, and it cut off right when it was about ready to hit its climax and to become even way more epic.
Oh, yeah.
They were bringing Hordak in, they're doing this, the Snake Men are in there, and it was about to go apeshit crazy, and for some reason the show got the axe, and I really wish they would have been able to finish it because it looked like it was going to be phenomenal.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was this on Cartoon Network?
I'm actually not sure.
I want to say that it was.
Okay.
Which would explain why it got killed so quickly.
Yes, it was.
And Cartoon Network has this thing where they have to axe a show right when it's getting good. And it's not probably just Cartoon Network, but I think it's primarily Cartoon Network is like, yeah, we're kind of done with this concept. Next! And they have their assembly line moving forward. But as for this show, granted I don't have it on my list either. I think I overlooked it, but I've from what I have seen of this show is freaking awesome. The the writing, the voices, the new versions of the characters are just freaking badass as all hell.
Yeah. I want to give a shout. I would be remiss if we didn't say the guy that was behind it all in this series. It was Mike. Why am I going blank also? Mike Davis? Mike Young. Mike Young did a phenomenal job with this. I know you haven't seen it, Double D, but any thoughts?
It sounds really good. That's my thoughts. It sounds great, I guess.
I think it's a great start to the top 50.
49.
I believe we've outdone IGN once again, so we went from the 2003 Turtles to the 2002 He-Man to the 2008 Clone Wars, The Clone Wars. This is the complete CG, 3D, whatever you want to call it, Clone Wars that started in 2008. It's still going on. Mm-hmm. IGN ranked at 89. I think we did much better because I actually do think this deserves a spot in the top 50. We might have different opinions on this one because Mike and I are the only ones that had it in our top 50. Mike, I'll let you talk first about this one and in comparison to the other one, too.
This is another one that I'm the type of person that if I don't catch onto something when it first starts, I want to wait until it's either done or until, I've seen bits and pieces of this, but from what I've heard and from what I have seen, just amazing, amazing storytelling. As Kevin said, it's still running. I believe they just wrapped up their season 3 finale just happened. Just the way that they're expanding the Star Wars universe with this cartoon, and they're paying homage to all these different things.
So many characters.
So many. I mean, this
even Jar Jar had an episode for Pete's sake.
It's just amazing, amazing storytelling. They brought Qui-Gon Jinn. They brought Liam Neeson back for a few episodes, as a quote unquote ghost spirit thing. It was very, very, very cool.
What sells me on this one over the 2003 version is 100% visual.
Oh yeah.
I would say the storytelling a little bit as well. There's a few really corny moments in the 2003 version, and you don't get as many of those in this one, I find.
It's almost also, without even seeing the show, though, you can just tell that this one's going to be better somehow.
Yeah, it's aimed at a little bit of an older audience, I think, than the 2003 version, because this is actually a surprisingly dark show. They're not afraid to kill clone troopers in each episode.
Yeah.
But it's a very well done show. It's one of those more recent shows that I think definitely does deserve to be on the list. I don't know about top 50, but definitely top 60 material in my opinion.
Birdman had at number 13. I just want to bounce off of what Double D just said, that maybe not top 50. Steve, does this not quite deserve top 50 in your book?
I would probably say, granted, I haven't seen diddly squat of the show, but everything I have heard of it and seen as far as the visuals and the voicing, I'd have to say it's good. I probably would have to agree with you guys. I would say that this would definitely be a top 60s.
See, I think as long as it fell somewhere in this episode, I'm fine with wherever it would have fallen.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it. I think it is better than the 2003 version, so I'm happy it ranked ahead of it. And I think IGN at 89, that's a little too low.
Again, I'm going to make the comparison like I did with the Turtles cartoon. You have Clone Wars, that was the 2003 version. Now you have this version, The Clone Wars, where Clone Wars was kind of a campy type of thing. It did have some story, but those were technically shorts. I mean, they weren't an overall cartoon series. They were a series of shorts. And with this, you have entire season arcs, entire stories. Every time I see an advertisement on Cartoon Network for this, it makes me want to watch it, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, why am I going to jump in now and not know what's going on?
And the only bad thing about this series is in order to buy the seasons, you have to be rich. Seriously. The seasons are ungodly expensive.
But it's because they put like a ridiculous amount of bonus features on them as well.
Sure.
Another thing, too, to note is that this series, although it's sort of a remake of the 2003 series, it doesn't ignore that series either. A good example is the character of Asajj Ventress. Was invented for the original 2003 series. She never appeared in anything before that, and she's still in this series. So it's not like they're ignoring that continuity. They're just doing like a more expanded, sort of a fuller version of it, which is cool.
Right, yeah.
48.
Yogi Bear is smarter than the average bear. Yogi Bear is always in the ranger's hair. At a picnic table you will find him there. Stopping down more goodies than the average bear.
I gotta say, we're completely owning the IGN list so far in this episode, between the ones that they didn't rank and the ones that they didn't rank high enough. And this is one of the biggest travesties of the IGN list, the fact that the Yogi Bear show did not show up on their list.
I don't even think we need to mention how stupid the IGN list was anymore. It's a given at this point.
Like, and I don't know, maybe their theory is it was part of the Huckleberry Hound show, but that's bullshit because it spawned off its own show. And this is, I actually don't think we have this high enough. It's 48 on our list. This to me is top 20. This is the show that made Hanna-Barbera what it is. It spawned, if it wasn't successful, we'd never get any of the Hanna-Barbera classic shows.
I would say that the Flintstones was probably Hanna-Barbera's most memorable show.
Well,
but Yogi Bear is a fantastic show, and I'm glad it appeared on the list. I'd say it's right about where it belongs, personally.
I think the difference was Flintstones was supposed to be the primetime show more for an older audience, whereas the Yogi Bear show was like the cartoon for kids type thing in the daytime.
Yeah.
And actually, as far as like when it happened, Flintstones comes a little bit later, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And the Yogi Bear, if I'm remembering back from our Tooncast time, and I'm not going to say any episode because I'm not trying to pimp it out or anything, but they went originally at their very first pitch. As far as this went, when Huckleberry Hound came out in like 1959, this is what actually sold Huckleberry Hound, was that Yogi Bear was a part of it. And so even though the Yogi Bear show didn't start until 1961, it was actually around a little bit before the Flintstones, if I'm getting my facts right. But anyways, I just think it should be top 20. I mean, I think without its success, we don't get a lot of what we got from Hanna-Barbera. Mike, what do you think?
No, Yogi should so be a little bit higher. It was just so awesome to have, it's just a fun show.
Well, it's a fun show. I mean, how many times has actually, if you look at individual characters and how many times a character has shown up in another show, in another movie, or something like that. I mean, obviously you get like your Batmans and your Spider-Mans and stuff like that. But Yogi Bear is one of those that is one of the most iconic characters ever. He has shown up in like at least 20 different television shows, movies, or whatever, which is up there with, like, I don't know, Bugs Bunny and, like, those types of characters. I mean, Yogi Bear is iconic.
Yeah, I would say he's probably one of Hanna-Barbera's top 5 most popular creations, so definitely stupid of IGN to not include this on their list. Even though it only ran for 2 seasons, it didn't last a very long time, but it's still... Well, and everyone remembers it. There's shows that could have ran for 5 or 6 years that people have forgotten, or that just aren't that great. But this show ran for a short time, and it was amazing. So,
and it spawned off. It was kind of like one of those. Even though the original show only lasted that long, it's one of those like Scooby-Doo where it spawned off all these different versions of itself. And you had like Yogi's Gang, you had like Yogi's Treasure Hunt.
Clark.
Yeah, you had like he showed up in the Laugh Olympics and all these different shows. I mean, there was probably like 15 different shows that Yogi starred in over 3 or 4 decades. You had Yogi's Kids, which was all the way in the 80s they were still making Yogi's cartoons. And since we mentioned it with Smurfs, we should mention the live action Yogi that just did it already come out?
Yes, it's
I haven't seen it, but I haven't heard anything good.
At least we ranked it, and at least we gave it top 50. Steve, you did not vote for this. Do you think it warrants top 50, or at least are you happy that it's on the list somewhere?
Yeah, I would say I'd rate it top 50. I don't know what the fuck I put on my list. Because some of them I'm like, why didn't I have these? And then some of them I'm like, why did I even bother putting these? And then this show I did like watching this when I was growing up, and this is one of the few that I can still watch now that's from that time era.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it does hold up pretty well, and I do see that it is too high up there on the list. I think or too low, depending on how you're looking at it. But,
I think it should be higher,
yes, I think
30.
it should be much higher than where it's at, and I think it should be higher than what IGN gave it.
IGN didn't rank it at all.
But,
that's right.
Yes, and IGN is nothing but a bunch of fucking asshats for not even having Yogi Bear on their list. How could you not have such an iconic show on the list?
Do we even have to continue mentioning IGN at this point?
Yes, we do.
Idiot Gaming Network.
We've made our point. No.
Idiot Gaming Network.
The bottom line is Yogi Bear deserves to be on the top 100, and I think it deserves to be higher than 48, but at least it's in the top 50.
47.
Another franchise heard of for the first time now. We've had a lot of comic book series with 3 different Spider-Man entries and a Batman entry, and at number 47 we receive our first Superman entry. Superman the Animated Series is from 1996. Also one of the first times so far in this episode where IGN's actually ranked something higher than us. Let's start with Steve. Superman the Animated Series coming in at 47. You agree, you disagree, and will this be the only Superman series that makes the countdown?
I disagree. I think it should be higher because this is the definitive best Superman cartoon series. Granted, there aren't very many of them compared to like Batman or say Spider-Man.
I would actually disagree with that personally, because I had the original Max Fleischer Superman series. I think I had that as like number 9 on my list. Although I do love this series, but I would say that's the definitive one personally, though I doubt it's going to make the list, but we'll have to see.
No, see, I love this series because of not only the graphics or the animation style or the writing, but I love the consistency with the rest. This is what kind of bridged the gap between Batman the Animated Series and kind of Justice League and kind of got everything rolling through there. Plus you have a great voice cast, and this starts the many crossovers that you'll see through the DCAU.
Yeah.
And I used to watch this show when I'd watch Batman because everything was pretty much back to back then, and I just loved it.
So we got one person that's saying that this is the definitive, one person saying that the early classic Superman is the definitive. Mike, break the tie.
The Max Fleischer show is a product of its time. While it is still good, it is good. It was very awesome for the time, but those adventures were just so there. Just even back then, I think, it just didn't really, for me, it didn't really capture me as far as...
It was a different time, though. I mean,
right.
Now cartoons are more linear and you can bring back characters and stuff like that. Back then it was almost expected to have like a different plot in each episode, and it was more about Superman kind of... there would be like a volcano going off or something, and he would have to figure out a way to stop it. I mean, it was still thrilling in its own way. It was just kind of a different form of storytelling. But no, I definitely agree that this deserves to be on the list. I'm very happy that it is where it is, and I'd even say it could be a little bit higher.
Oh yeah, it so needs to be higher. Like Steve said, this is what... Batman the Animated Series is technically mini movies. They're mini individual movie type episodes, and it really is on its own. Superman the Animated Series, specifically the episode Ghost in the Machine, is where all of the continuity starts. as far as that goes. And I know specifically that the producers, Bruce Timm, James Tucker, all them, Dwayne McDuffie, may rest in peace, all those guys, they didn't set out to make the continuity, but by the time they got to Justice League and Batman Beyond, they were like, oh, well, we can tie this into this. We can tie this into this. So really, this is where it starts. And voice acting, oh my God. Tim Daly as Superman was awesome. Dana Delaney as Lois Lane, perfect casting for Lois Lane. Dana Delaney's voice for Lois Lane, to me, is the definitive Lois Lane out of animation, live action, anything.
I would have to agree with you on that, actually. Whenever I'm reading a comic book and Lois Lane's characters in it, that's sort of the voice that's going through my head. So this show did have fantastic voice acting, great animation, and a lot of really good characters as well. I remember... I think my favorite episodes were the ones that had Metallo in them, a very well-developed character for like a superhero villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is this one of the rare instances, this episode, where IGN actually got us one time here, since they had it at 36 and we had it at 47?
Yeah, probably. I mean, we're not so far off. I mean, I still think this is at least top 30 material, maybe 28, 27. And the other thing that really, really hit home with the continuity with this series, not just Ghost in the Machine as far as tying everything back, this was the first crossover. World's Finest, the three-parter, where you had Batman and Superman meeting for the first time. You had Lex Luthor and the Joker teaming up, and then Batman and Superman teamed up. Anyone that says anything against World's Finest, a.k.a. the Batman-Superman movie, you are fucking dead to me. Because that three-parter was just amazingly written, amazingly voice-acted, and just it told a fluid story, and it's one of the greatest things about this series.
Why would anyone say anything against that?
Oh, there's crazy people out there. I like IGN. Is this legitimately top 30, Mike, or is that your superhero bias playing a factor?
No, it's legitimately top 30. There are a few episodes in Superman the Animated Series that aren't so great, but for the most part, legitimately, I wish it was at least top 30. Even if it came in, at like, I said 27, 28 earlier, but I mean, maybe, 30 or 31. I think it needs to be a little bit higher. Overall, very, very well done. And it's just amazing. I mean, yeah.
Steve, go ahead.
The only criticism I'd maybe have for the show is I don't think it was quite as memorable as Batman the Animated Series in terms of like tone and storytelling and stuff. But I think for me personally, that's just because I've always liked Batman more than I like Superman. Mm-hmm. But it's probably the best way that they could have ever brought Superman to the small screen for that era, I guess.
Steve, I just want to go to you for a second, and then I actually want to stay with this one for a little while. But Steve, did IGN get this one better than us at 36 compared to 47?
I would. I don't know. I wouldn't give it a 36, but I would still have it closer to 40 than where it's at.
So, like, in between, basically?
Yeah, kind of a happy medium between the two, because I don't think that it deserves where it landed, and I don't think it deserves where IGN put it. I kind of agree with your whole statement, Dave, that you just gave on between Batman and Superman, that, Batman for me is more my favorite than Superman, but this was still a great cartoon.
And that's why I want to stay with this one for a second longer, because I mentioned that this is the first example, this was another franchise that we hadn't heard of. Obviously, we've talked about Batman and we've talked about Spider-Man. I got two questions for all you guys. The first one I want to start with is, do we expect to see any other superhero franchises that we have not seen somewhere in the rest of this top 50? I mean, we've seen Spider-Man and we've seen Batman and now Superman. Are there any others we should see?
Oh yeah, X-Men is probably the big one that comes to my mind. The 90s X-Men series. I mean, there's also X-Men Evolution, which was okay, but
what about stuff like?
I would definitely should be on there.
What about stuff like Fantastic Four or just other superheroes that are nothing like that? Iron Man, Hulk.
They were good in their time, but go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I remember the Iron Man series being okay. I think he actually had an episode in the Spider-Man show before.
Yeah, that's where it started.
Series. But I don't think any of those were really good enough to be in the top 50. I think if anything like Fantastic Four or Iron Man had appeared it would be in, like, the lower 50, probably.
Yeah.
So a possibility of maybe seeing or hoping to see some X-Men or something like that. And other than that, maybe...
Hopefully, if the 90s X-Men series doesn't appear somewhere on this list, then I'll be a little bit pissed off, personally, because
so will I.
Classic.
Yeah.
Is Superman the worst out of the franchises we've talked about so far? Is Spider-Man and Batman just superior franchises?
No. I mean, well, specifically to Superman the Animated Series, it's, as I already said, it basically started the DC Animated Universe continuity. It is its own thing, where I said that, Batman, the animated series, is technically like mini movies. Superman was more serialized. It was more...
But isn't Batman and Spider-Man both better than Superman?
No. I'd say that... I mean, people like them for different
It's a personal
reasons.
preference.
Yeah, I'd say it depends what you're looking for, really. Spider-Man was a little bit cheesier, a little bit more on the sci-fi side of things. Batman was a lot darker, and then Superman's kind of in between the two, almost.
Gotcha. I just never have liked Superman anything. I don't know why. But I think it'll be interesting. We'll see, like I said, we'll see if we see any more Batman or Spider-Man, and now that you guys bring up X-Men, we'll see if we see that.
46.
So previously, I don't know if it was the last episode or the first episode, we mentioned some stuff about Nickelodeon shows and if we would see another one. And making its spot in the top 50 here at number 46 is a Nickelodeon show, and it is the one that we thought we might see, and that is Rugrats. Now, before...
Fucking hell.
Shut up, Mike. Before Mike does whatever he does with shows that he doesn't like, I want to at least look at the facts here. From 1991 to 2004 it was on. It had 9 different seasons, 173 episodes. It spawned multiple movies, Rugrats All Grown Up, another show. 8 people voted for it. It's getting nominations and awards out the wazoo as far as Annies and Emmys. In my opinion, before we let Mike talk, this definitely deserves a spot in the top 100. It definitely deserves a spot... in my mind, right around 50, whether it's on the other side of 50 or this side of 50. I think this is a quality show that a lot of people watched over a decade, and I think it warrants a spot. Mike, go ahead.
I was kind of hoping to talk before Mike, because he's probably
going to... Well, the only thing I'm going to say really quick is you need to switch number 70 with this. You need to put Doug here and put Rugrats at the fucking far end of the count.
I'll agree with that, because I definitely think Doug was the way more intelligently written Nickelodeon show. But I also grew up with Rugrats as well, so I do have kind of a soft spot in my heart for this show. And it was a good show. I mean, there's a reason why it lasted so long, and then it had all these movies made out of it and everything.
Rugrats
it was just a fun show. I don't know.
To me, Rugrats has a bigger following, though, than Doug. Whether Doug was a better show or not, Rugrats was the one that was the more popular, I guess.
I think it's because Rugrats had more of a universal appeal. I think Doug had a very specific audience. I think it was aimed more towards males, kind of in a little bit of an older age range. Rugrats was more of a show that guys and girls could watch, and it reached... sort of an all ages, well, not all ages, but, it reached kind of a wider crowd, which I think is why it showed up higher on this list. I think it could have gone a little bit lower, but I think I feel the same way as you, Kevin, that it should be somewhere around the 50 mark.
And looking at the people that voted for it, Dodd had it at 38, Pixel Dan 49, Ryan at 52, and both of us at 58, so we all kind of had it around that middle part. One person had it at 72, and a couple of people had it in their top 20. IGN had it 92nd, and I think that's too low. I think it's definitely better than that. I don't understand what your hate is exactly for Rugrats, Mike.
This was one of the reasons was at the time I was living with some friends who had kids, and that's all the kids would watch, because technically this is a kids show. This is like an age
doesn't mean that's bad.
4 to 14 type of cartoon. This is not something.
Why are you
at the time? I don't know. whatever. It's just one of those things where it just didn't appeal to me whatsoever. And it was one of those things where if I had to choose, I would rather watch Bobby's World than watch this.
But Smurfs,
I'd actually agree with you on that.
Oh, I'd rather watch Bobby's World too, but I don't know. You can't discount it just because it's a kid's show. You rank Smurfs pretty high.
Yeah, but Smurfs was specifically when I say kids show coming to Rugrats, Smurfs were not little babies.
Yeah, but Rugrats was basically the Smurfs for the 90s.
It was really. Steve, weigh in.
I would have to say that although it was not on my list, I would say that Rugrats is definitely one of those influential shows for some people. Mm-hmm. You either got it or you didn't. And I personally don't care for the show, but my wife grew up on it, and there's only like a year and a half difference between the two of us, and she loved the show growing up. So, I mean, I can see it was either a hit or miss. You either liked it or you didn't. And if you liked it, it's one of those great shows that you just kind of followed all the way through. Whereas if you just didn't give a crap, that's why it isn't on your list.
Right.
But I would say that it does deserve to be here.
Yeah, like I said, I just fall back on that too. Anything that shows up for 9 seasons and continuously gets renewed, that's quality, at least in a manner of, doing what it was supposed to do as far as being popular for its demographic or its ratings had to be there. So
I think what I liked about Rugrats too was it was a surprisingly innocent show for during the 90s when you had stuff that was going more for edgy, like Ren and Stimpy or Rocko's Modern Life. Then you had Rugrats that was a lot less edgy, a lot more kind of simplified and innocent for younger kids. So it kind of went against the grain a little bit, which was nice. I will say, though, that it started off better than it ended.
Yeah.
Like, you can definitely see a quality difference if you watch the original episodes from, 91, 92, and then watch some of the newer stuff. It's just not really as good. But, I mean, you're gonna run out of ideas after a while once you have that many seasons.
True. So we did see another Nickelodeon show on the list. I don't know if we'll see another one or not, but at least we've seen 2 or at least one more since we talked about Doug.
45.
Meet George Jetson. His boy Elroy. Daughter Judy. Jane, his wife.
So coming in at 45, another classic. Like I said, we haven't had a lot of them, but we've been getting a little bit more of them lately, and that is Jetsons. Funny that it came in 46 on IGN, comes in at 45 for us. I'm actually okay with this. I could see it being a little bit higher, but I'm okay with it at least being in the top 50. It was around in the 60s. It came back and made a revival in the 80s. To me, this is always the second-rate Flintstones. I mean, it's basically Flintstones in space. So I'm okay with it being about right where it is. Mike, you had it at 51, so is it about right for you too?
I kind of wish it was top 40, like either right at 40 or 39. And yeah, I kind of ranked it a little bit higher, or a little bit lower on my own list, but that was because of other reasons. And as far as it being the futuristic version of the Flintstones, I kind of will agree with that. However, one of the best things about the Jetsons for me specifically was the crossover when the Jetsons met the Flintstones in that crossover movie they did back in the 80s. That was just so awesome.
I thought you were going to say the Jetsons movie, like the actual movie.
Oh, no.
I did just make a page for the Jetsons Meet the Flintstones.
I loved that movie when I was a kid. I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while, but when I was younger, I adored the Jetsons movie. That was like the one thing that I actually really liked about the Jetsons.
I like the Jetsons because I've always been a sci-fi fan, but if you were to give me the choice of watching Jetsons or watching like Flintstones, I would have watched Flintstones.
Oh yeah, because Flintstones had way more intelligent writing. Jetsons almost felt like they took, like they were going to fire like 3 of the writers from the Flintstones, and instead of firing them, they threw them on a different show that was basically a Flintstones ripoff. Yeah. It's not a bad show. I'm not saying that it's bad. I think it's good where it is on our list, but yeah, I agree with you that it's definitely just the futuristic version of the Flintstones, and it's almost like they made this show specifically so they could do that Flintstones crossover.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's like they had that in mind when they created it.
I mean, if you look at it, and before Steve goes, if you look at it, I mean, yes, Fred and Wilma only had Pebbles, and then Barney and Betty had Bam Bam, whereas George and Judy have Elroy and Judy. It's kind of almost the same thing.
George and Judy have Elroy and Judy?
Whatever. You know what I mean. George and Jane have Elroy and Judy. You know, you have this thing of the shows are basically mirror images of each other. It's kind of like, you know, people always want to copy the Scooby-Doo, you know, method. And it was just so good. But what really cemented Jetsons for me was when the Jetsons met the Flintstones, because I love that movie. I remember when I was a kid, I watched that movie more than enough times for the VHS tape to break.
Excellent.
Wow. I think I watched that movie like once.
Yeah, I watched it once.
I don't know.
Steve, IGN 46, us 45, you 43. So is this perfect?
I would say so. To me, this just I like this show, and although it wasn't as strong as the Flintstones, it's still one of those ones that you just can't deny it being that high on the list.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect placement, actually. I mean, I could see it being a little bit higher. As long as it made the top 50, I'm happy.
44.
So I think this is the first time we've had 10 people, half of our voters put this on their list. IGN had it at 31. We put it at 44. It is the Muppet Babies. Ran for almost all the 80s, 84 to 95 seasons, 107 episodes, 3 Daytime Emmy nominations, 5 Daytime Emmy wins. I think almost all of us voted for this one, actually. All 4 of us voted for this one. So let's just start with Steve. Muppet Babies at 44. How do you feel?
Feel fine with it. I mean, it wasn't a bad show. It wasn't one that I particularly watched all that often, and it did last a long time. But I think it's by no means should have been rated any higher than where it's at.
I think this one and Smurfs should have been flipped.
I think the reason... I'm just glad this outranked Rugrats, to be honest with you.
Yep.
But I think the reason why this showed up so high on the list is because if you don't have any connection to the Muppet Babies, then you're not going to care about it. But I think anyone who watched the Muppet Babies as a kid just loved it. I remember watching this like every day when I got home from kindergarten.
Yeah.
They had this show on, and I just adored it. It was one of my favorite shows. I think why I liked it when I was a kid was it didn't really talk down to its audience, but it sort of just talked at them, if that makes any sense.
No, I agree.
It's what a good kid show should be, I think.
Well, I had it, Scotty and I had it actually in the top 20, and the reason I did that was because, for me, this was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. It's something my sister and I loved. We loved, obviously, the Muppet Show and all the Jim Henson stuff, and this cartoon version, I loved the live-action stuff that they put in there. I loved, this is one of the first characters that I can remember, and a lot of people have copied this, though, with the nanny, one of the first characters that you couldn't actually see all of. You never got to see her face. It had a lot of great characters, so I had it higher. I'm okay with it where it is. The only reason I said Smurfs maybe should be higher is because Smurfs had a little bit longer run. It had 300 more episodes, so to me they should be near each other. I think
in some ways, though, I think the Muppets was almost the more better made show. Yeah, then it was better written and better made, I think, than the Smurfs in a lot of ways. I think the Smurfs was just more popular and had more of a staying power.
Well, and the other thing the Muppets did really good is they had the kids stuff and they had like the kid-friendly stuff, but then they would go on these adventures or go on these crazy things, and it almost felt like it reached multiple audiences as far as age groups.
Yeah, and the Rugrats almost did the same thing. Like I said, I'm kind of glad this outranked it because it came first and almost did the exact same thing. So you almost wonder if Rugrats was just sort of copying this formula.
Pretty much.
True. Well, then the other thing the Muppet Babies did is they did comedy, they did sci-fi, they did fantasy, they did adventure, they did, all these different types of genres. They tackled it all. Mike, you haven't said much. What do you think about this one?
I love this show. This is one of those shows, along with the Muppet Show, that just, and I know the Muppet Show is obviously the live-action stuff, but just, it was so great to be able to look through, Cartoon Kermit, and Piggy and Rolf and Fozzie and all them and Gonzo. And they just kind of took the Muppets to a whole new level with this. Because there's so much more you can do in animation with characters like these. And it was just really, really great. The only real thing I liked about the live action parts of this was kind of like the door double take, where Gonzo would open a door and he would immediately shut it and then open it again to see if it was real. But I specifically like the cartoon more than the live-action stuff that was in it.
Well, and you also have a phenomenal voice cast in this. Frank Welker doing a lot of stuff. Dave Coulier, Russie Taylor, Peter Cullen at times, Howie Mandel, Greg Berg. I mean, it was a great voice cast. There's not much bad you can say about this.
Don't forget Barbara Billingsley.
Yeah, as Nanny. Yep. But, I mean, there's just not a lot of bad stuff that anyone could come up with about this show, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 of us voted for it.
Yeah, it must say something.
Yeah, like I said, I think everyone whoever kind of was exposed to this as a child, it had a major impact on them.
Yeah, I mean, and it won a ton of awards, so, I mean, even back when it was actually running, people respected how good it was written and what was being done there.
Well, and the nicer thing about it is it wasn't the same old thing, kind of like how Smurfs was. This was something totally different pretty much every episode.
So we kind of had the 90s version of this show with Rugrats and then the 80s version of this show with Muppet Babies. What were kids watching in the 2000s?
43.
Oh! Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Absorbent and yellow and porous is he.
SpongeBob SquarePants!
If nautical nonsense be something you wish,
SpongeBob SquarePants!
then drop on the deck and flop like a fish.
SpongeBob SquarePants!
Ready?
So from Muppet Babies to Rugrats to number 43, SpongeBob SquarePants. Another one that's lasted a long time, started in 99, and it's still going, folks. Five of us had this in our top 20. IGN had it in their top 20 at number 15. I'm not going to list all the awards because it will take too long. This definitely deserves to be in the top 50. I think it could have been a little bit higher. And I'm not necessarily someone who grew up with it. I'm not someone who watches it a lot. I just respect how long it's been around and how many people love this show. Let's go to Double D. You had this one down at 93, so is this too high?
I'd say this probably, I think 93 is a bit low. I think I just kind of threw it in there as an afterthought, really. I think this kind of deserves maybe to be somewhere in the 60s or 70s. I respect SpongeBob a lot. I just never really got into it, and I think it's a little bit overrated. I think the reason a lot of people like this, I hate to say it, but it's because it's funnier when you're high. I mean, kids like it because it's stupid humor, but all the people our age that watch this show and really like it are probably on something at the time.
Nice. But it at least deserves a top 100.
Yeah, definitely deserves to be in the top 100. I just don't think it deserves to be this high, but I definitely understand the appeal of SpongeBob, and it does have some hilarious moments. There have been a few times where I've watched SpongeBob and just laughed my ass off at stuff that just made no sense. But I think that's why people find it so funny.
Yeah. Mike, how did this not make your list?
It was something that I hadn't really, I knew of the popularity and stuff like that, and I had seen episodes here and there, but it was something that wasn't really on the top of my mind of best of all time. Yes, I understand that, the popularity and the longevity of it is great, and I will agree with what you guys have said that, there are some bit parts, really, really funny parts. I don't know, Kevin, we've said this before. We spent 6 hours on our lists.
Yeah.
So it's like...
And Steve, I don't think you did vote for it. I think that's supposed to be someone else's name. That's supposed to be someone else's name. So do you think this should not be on the list?
I think it should be on the list, but I don't think it should be this high. I think it should be above 50.
Yeah, I don't know. I see it in the top 50, but
Steve.
That's what I mean.
I can see it either way. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan, so I'm not gonna try to rally votes for it to be in the top 50 or anything like that. But I can see it in the 40s. I can see it in the 60s.
I think 43 is fine for it. It is an amazing show as far as voice acting. You've got Tom Kenny as SpongeBob. You've got fucking Clancy Brown as Mr. Krabs. You've got Clancy Brown, who was Lex Luthor in Superman the Animated Series. He was the Kurgan in Highlander. He was the head guard in Shawshank Redemption. And in this, it's like you wouldn't expect him to do a voice like Mr. Krabs, but at the same time you would. And honestly, and I know Kevin's going to kill me for this, but the only reason why I've started taking more notice of SpongeBob now, and like I said, I just forgot about it being on my list, but not being on my list, but the only reason why I've taken more notice of it now is because it comes on every Sunday at 11:30, right before Power Rangers Samurai. On Nickelodeon, so that's...
you are so lame.
Shut up.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shut up.
42.
All right, I know Mike's about to have a fangasm here, but before he does, I just got to say this is too high for this show. It does not deserve to be in the top 50. I don't care what Mike says. Number 42 is M.A.S.K. Crusaders working overtime. Anyway,
yes, no, thank you so much.
I wasn't ready for you yet,
perfect. Actually. I don't care. 42 is perfect.
Okay, I don't think it should be where IGN put it at 99. I don't think it should be there. I think it should be in the 90s or 80s somewhere, probably in the 80s. I voted for 56 just because I knew a lot of people would leave it off their list. It should not be top 50. It's a great show for 80s people, and it's cool, and it had a unique idea and a different take on stuff, but it should not be top 50, Mike. I know, Phil, you and Christopher had it in the top 50, but let's be honest.
So did JT.
Or that's what I meant.
JT had 8.
That's a little too high.
It did only run for 2 seasons, and I will fully admit that some of it is extremely cheesy, especially with Matt Tracker's kid Scott and that little fucking stupid-ass robot T-Bob. But one of the reasons why, that I absolutely loved it is because it's a different take on... Honestly, it's a combination of G.I. Joe and Transformers, and it's a different take on it. And one of the other reasons why I absolutely love this show is the theme song and just the way that they did the transformation of the cars and the people and all that stuff. It's just great. And I think 42 is okay for it. It's not top 40. It's not top 30. It's not like closer to the top. But it's like, for me, it's kind of like right in the middle as far as where IGN ranked it and where we ranked it. So
the toys were excellent. The theme song is one of the greatest theme songs ever created for a cartoon. I don't know. To me, I lumped this one in with Brave Star, Silverhawks, Cops. They should all be like 70s, 80s, maybe somewhere in there. I don't know. What do you think, Double D?
I never really watched M.A.S.K. Like, I've heard of it. But it wasn't on when I was watching cartoon shows as a kid. I guess they just didn't air any reruns, and obviously I wasn't alive when it was airing. So I just kind of missed the boat on this one. So I don't know if it's that good or not.
Well,
so
it's not been on DVD, so you've had no way to watch it. It's never been released yet, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure, so. Yeah, I don't really have much of an opinion on this one. I think that's the only reason why I sort of missed it on my list, was because I just haven't been exposed to it.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being top 100, but not top 50. Steve, any thoughts on M.A.S.K?
I would have to say I don't really care for the show.
Yeah.
It just wasn't one of those ones that I grew up with or have any recollection of. I don't know if it should be ranked this high.
It's one of the weird 80s action, like just random, like niche shows that somehow made it into the top 50.
Yeah, and see, I mean, I know it has a following, it has episodes, it has, you know, all that crap, but it's still, I don't think it's top 50 worthy. I think it should be like in the 60s somewhere.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, only because the fact that they weren't showing any reruns of this when I was a kid, and that it hasn't really had that much of a lasting cultural impact. I mean, the people who love it really seem to love it, but I don't think it really deserves to be this high.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not trying to rain on the people's parades that rank this high. I mean, I know Mike and JT and Phil and Chris were probably happy that this is this high because none of them wanted to see it down by 99. But you can't compare it to those other 80s shows that have had different incarnations, different stuff released, movies or DVD sets or this or that. I mean, this does not quite have the same following that some of those did.
No.
41.
To me, this is another one that you either like it or you don't. And the people that like it a lot. I recognize that it's been on for 13 seasons and 255 episodes. We're talking about King of the Hill at 41. To me, I'm not a fan. Does it deserve top 100? Yes. I'm fine with it where it's at because I don't want it any higher. Mike?
This needs to be much lower. This needs to be like really, really low 70s. It is a good show, but I don't know. I just every time I catch an episode of this in syndication or because I know Cartoon Network runs it a lot now, like on the overnights. No.
It's won a crap load of awards. It's been on for 13 seasons. It's got some merit. I just don't think it should be any higher than it is. I'm fine with it at 41, though. I don't think it needs to be in the 70s. Steve, do you any opinions on King of the Hill?
Personally, I don't think it should be where it's at. I think I agree with Mike that it should be in the 70s.
Okay.
But this is my reasoning for it. Not only is the animation a little annoying to me, but the show is pretty much one of those shows that you can fall asleep watching because it's so boring. I would much rather sit there and granted, Simpsons has lost its tune a long time ago, so I wouldn't sit there and say that, it's better than Simpsons either. But I would rather watch Family Guy or Futurama over this. This show should be by no means should be any higher than any of those.
Yeah, but we haven't seen Family Guy or Futurama show up yet.
Well, let's talk about that before you give your thoughts on King of the Hill. Since this is one of the first kind of primetime, more modern cartoons, which other? I mean, IGN's list was loaded with them. I know a lot of them were Adult Swim or whatever. But what other primetime cartoon shows should be on this list, or should we expect to see? If King of the Hill is at 41, what else should we see?
Futurama, most definitely. Futurama has a great
I love Futurama.
I do.
I mean, obviously, Simpsons and Family Guy we should see.
I'm not a huge fan of Family Guy, but it deserves to be on the list.
Not higher than this, though.
Yes, it does. It's better.
I'd actually agree with Mike. I'd rank King of the Hill a little bit higher than Family Guy. I think King of the Hill was one of the things I forgot to put on my list. I have like 5 or 6 shows that I just forgot about, to be honest with you.
I don't know. I'd rank Family Guy way higher than King of the Hill.
I have to agree with Kevin on this one.
We're split.
Well, the thing is, King of the Hill had more memorable characters, I think, and
I disagree.
More developed plot lines. Family Guy, you could have
probably had more developed plot lines, but not characters.
Well, definitely, Family Guy, you could have an episode that has a 5-minute plot of Peter crossing the road, and the whole time he's crossing the road, he has flashbacks about thinking about other times while he's crossing the road, and that could be a Family Guy episode. Well, I could write my own Family Guy episode in 20 minutes if I wanted to. It's just random pop culture references.
But I guess my point is, you said character-wise. There's the characters in Family Guy are way more...
I'd say in Family Guy they're a little bit too two-dimensional, to be honest with you.
Peter and Brian, come on.
They're memorable, but they're not... The characters in King of the Hill, like, say what you will about the comedy or the writing or anything, but the characters are fleshed out way better in this show.
I just gotta ask Mike, has Mike even seen... And Mike, have you even seen an episode of Family Guy?
Yeah, I've seen several.
Steve, chime in.
I definitely agree with the fact that characters are more fleshed out in King of the Hill. I'll give you that. They have more personality. They have more development.
They're more fleshed out. I think they're more memorable in Family Guy, though.
They're more memorable in Family Guy only because they have these batshit retarded conversations that you know how it's going to go when they started.
Yeah. So... Besides Family Guy, King of the Hill, and Simpsons, and Futurama, any other primetime adult cartoons that we should see on this list? I don't even know if I can think of any other ones that
not really.
I can see some people saying South Park, but that lost its tune way before Simpsons.
I think South Park deserves to be on the list. I agree. I think there's some stuff that's kind of didn't last as long and has been a little bit forgotten. Obviously, we saw you guys talked about The Critic the last episode. I think that.
But talk about excellent writing. South Park definitely had some excellent writing.
Yeah.
Whether you're a South Park fan or not, you can't watch some of those things and not be like, "Wow, that was clever."
I think also Robot Chicken probably deserves to be on the list as well.
But that's not cartoon, though, is it?
Technically, it is.
Yeah. I'd consider stop motion as a form. It's a form of animation.
It's animation. You still have voiceover. It's still you're still putting a voice to something, so it's still technically animation because they animate the action figures.
Another one that I love as well that probably won't be on the list is the Dilbert cartoon.
Yeah.
True. I just think it's interesting that this is kind of one of the first ones of these that we've seen, and I'm interested to see what other ones we have and what our reactions will be as far as if and when they fall into the countdown. But I think that kind of wraps it up for this episode. We've gone from 60 down to 41, so we've crossed the halfway point. We've given you the 10 on each side of the 50 mark, and we're down to our top 40, and I'm interested to see what happens from here. So make sure you tune in to our next episode to see numbers 40 through 21.
And we would like to thank Double D for giving us the twig representation here on this episode.